This international student want to learn about the Vrijmibo, want to learn about Dutch working culture.
I love the Dutch working culture. This data, I don't know if it's real, but the Netherlands is the country that less works in terms of hours. But when they work very productively.
Yeah, that's true. The people working are just more productive than they are back home. Hey everyone, I'm Gabriel.
And I'm Alyssa.
And welcome to Brewing Student Cultures podcast. Brewing Student Cultures podcast.
Sipping coffee,
Spilling tea.
And sharing cultures.
So today's episode, we're going to talk about a topic that I feel like a lot of international students sort of gloss over once they've been in the Netherlands for a while. And that is a statement that I feel like resonates with a lot of them. It's, I can't find work in the Netherlands.
We're here with Karel. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself to us?
Yeah, so my name is Karel. I'm founder of International Students Work. And Alice and Gabriel invited me today to talk about how to find a job in the Netherlands.
Nice.
And it's not mission impossible. It's not.
So do you have any experience or any insights you can share to students who really find it impossible when it comes to searching for jobs? Because a lot of the requirements are usually you need to speak Dutch, or you have to at least have a decent level of Dutch, even if it's not fluent. Do you have any insights?
Yeah, I think it depends also how open yourself to different types of jobs. So if you're looking for a very study-related job outside of campus, for example, especially outside the Randstad, there are a lot of the companies are still focused on working in Dutch.
Yeah.
So then having a more study-related office job is difficult because you need to speak Dutch, right? Mm-hmm. So that's difficult. But if you're looking for a more student job, so like for example working in hospitality or production, logistics, there the language is less important, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So that might give you more options to find a job in general.
All right.
But it depends what you're looking for, of course. Yeah.
So what is the approach that you should take when approaching a company? So if let's say you want to work in hospitality, mm-hmm. And so far you can't see any international students working there. Is there a specific approach that you might take when approaching the company?
I would. You need to have some courage, but I would always just walk in, have your CV there. Perhaps via LinkedIn you can find out who for example, the manager is or the owner is, or in Dutch, the bedrijfsleider. In a bar, I think mainly the bedrijfsleider is in charge of recruitment. Right. It's the manager, basically. See if he or she is available and drop your CV, for example. I think in hospitality that's really a common thing to do in the Netherlands. Of course, also via the website, I would apply those kind of things for sure. Or perhaps you have a friend already who you might be new in the country, but you might be here already for some time. Mm-hmm. Try to see, for example, friends of you already work somewhere, and you can use your network and ask him or her to introduce you. That works better usually.
So face-to-face seems to be more of a, when it comes to these types of jobs, at least face-to-face seems to be better than just sending a CV by email.
I would definitely, if it's about hospitality, then I would go for face-to-face. Yeah. And if you look at preparation, like obviously it makes more sense if you prepare it per bar. Hey, I would like to work here because, and you have because I've been here often, or I like the vibe here, then your story is better. But I can imagine if you're really desperate, print 20 CVs, go to the city center, walk to several bars, and then that might increase your chance, for example. I can also imagine that, for example, Irish pubs is more internationally oriented than a local bar somewhere in a small neighborhood, so.
That's true. What about our statement? So I can't find a job in the Netherlands as an international student. Do you also resonate with that? Do you also understand what it's like? Because from the recruiter's point of view, like, why would you say that that's a problem? Or have you experienced that?
No, of course I understand that because I've studied abroad myself, couldn't find a job or difficult to find a job there where I studied. I was studied in Japan and in Italy. So, and I didn't speak Italian and Japanese, so that didn't really help. But if you look for international students in the Netherlands, I've spoken with a lot of them during the recruitment in our company, of course. And I definitely resonate that they have a disadvantage at the labor market compared with Dutch students.
That's true.
And that I can imagine why is that. Like, of course, companies, it must be, like, from what I imagine, it must be an easier process to hire, like, someone that already speaks the language and someone that's already integrated with the culture. And I think probably in the administration aspect, it's easier. I don't know if that's true or not. Could you elaborate on that?
I imagine for non-EU students.
Like, is it easier for companies to hire? Like, what is the barrier there?
No, for EU, there's not a lot of differences compared with a Dutch person. The only thing is, of course, that I think a lot of Dutch companies have Dutch contracts. So if I give you a Dutch contract, you probably do not know what's in there, So I can imagine that's something that they need to be willing to change or to adjust. For non-EUs, that's definitely more difficult because the employer needs to apply for a work permit. And they need to know how that works, or need to be willing to figure out how that works. And it's quite annoying for the non-EU students, of course, because they cannot apply for the work permit themselves. So otherwise, they would probably have done that.
Exactly.
But they're really depending on the employer.
So I think other than language, let's talk about EU students, or ignoring the visa. Other than the language, there shouldn't be much of a barrier for Dutch companies then to hire international students. So once you get over that language barrier, it should be significantly easier to hire internationals. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree, but I think we shouldn't overstep for the language barrier, because it's not only the paperwork, it's also some companies having older people in their workforce that are not that comfortable with speaking English, for example. I mean, we always think like, hey, in the Netherlands everyone speaks English, but most of them do. But like really getting to know someone in a workplace where sometimes safety is also important. Always is important in a work environment, safety. But like, I can imagine. So it's not sometimes not willing, but that, for example, we speak sometimes to a director or an HR manager that says, this is super cool, would love to work with internationals, but I also need to convince my own team of people that have been working here for 30, 40 years to be open for non-Dutch speaking staff. So language you see in contracts and paperwork, but also definitely in integration in a team.
Exactly.
But I think I didn't answer your question, right? Because you said if we're not talking about language and about the paperwork, are there any other things to consider that make it more difficult, or what was your question? But I think that's more for sometimes, at least what we experience is that mobility is sometimes difficult.
Okay.
Because we have companies that are a bit further away, but like and with Dutch or with international students, most of them don't have a car, for example. They rely on public transportation. So that's not something related specifically for international students. But if I would be an international student, then I would look at a certain radius around a student city that is also accessible with a bike or a bus or something like that.
And a lot of speak from experience. I was very lucky because I could ride a bike, but here in the Netherlands, it's kind of like standard. Everyone knows how to ride a bike, right? So I know a lot of people, and I myself have been one before. I could not bike, so I think it wouldn't be a possibility if my workplace was somewhere I would have to bike to. It's also, I would assume that's also one barrier to overcome.
But can you imagine how much that sometimes limits your search?
That's
because
for sure.
some companies you need to work in the evening. And
buses, public
if there are no
transport.
buses anymore, if you work in a bar, and you stop at 2 in the night or 3 in the night, or you work in a logistical company somewhere in an industry park, there are buses during the day, but not after 7 p.m. So it really limits the
amount of jobs.
The amount of jobs that you can getting. So it's So I think, also learning how to bike can help in broadening your scope.
And
And
at
in
least
general,
that-
I think learning how to bike in the Netherlands is a nice experience. It makes
It
sure
is.
Yeah.
you stay nicer, you feel more Dutchy if you want to feel more Dutchy, but I think that's definitely the
Yeah.
case.
No, yeah, I
So
agree.
yeah.
I
It's also a
agree,
good
and
way
Yeah,
to
but
save money.
I agree. Dutchies, like, employers don't think that you cannot bike. Like like they are Dutch and they think, hey, you're born, you
No.
can bike.
Yeah. I
You
tell
know, like
everyone.
you're here now, so you can bike.
Exactly.
But that's
yeah.
like a big,
I tell people like
Yeah.
the Dutch people I know. I was like, oh, I started biking when I was like
Yeah.
14, and then they were like, what? 14? And they're like, I learned how to bike when I was 3. And I was like, I could not walk when I was 3. What are you talking about? It's really like insane. And I think it's also this, like what we want as international students, part of the reason why we would want to find a job here is also integration, right?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
we could maybe find a remote job in a different country, and still live here. But I think it's also part of like understanding the culture and being part of it. And those small things that help you find a job are also things that help you integrate
Yeah.
the culture.
Yeah.
So being part of the work culture, the Dutch work culture, so
Yeah.
like participating in like drinks after
Yeah.
work on a Friday, or
Yeah.
bringing cake on your birthday. Those are also things that
Exactly.
I would assume are part of being like
Yeah.
integrated into the Dutch workplace.
Yeah.
So I think related to this, do you think that companies would benefit to their work culture if they had to hire international students? Do you think it's a barrier or is it a benefit?
Now, I think in the beginning there are barriers and there are certain biases to overcome. So that international students are always here for 5 months and then leave again, for example. So but that's not the case because a lot of students stay, of course, do a bachelor, do a master, and want to stay after graduation as well. So I think that's definitely, there are certain barriers that you need to overcome as a company.
Yeah.
Once you know that those barriers are not that big, and you have overcome them, then I think working with internationals obviously is a great opportunity because they bring a different dynamic, I think, than Dutch students. I think definitely that also in like by being an international, you're already brave and taking that step by going to another country and you do something different. You're willing to put yourself in a vulnerable position and to I think often then also learn. And I think a lot of companies are also looking for that type of person. Like, hey, you're coming here in our company, you don't know everything yet, but apparently you're adaptable because you have already been able to adapt in the Netherlands. So probably you can also adapt in our work environment. So once companies start seeing that, I think then they will also reap the benefits of it.
It also really largens their talent pool when it comes to looking for employees.
So that's true. Diversity and diversity of perspective as well, because I think if you're also stuck, I don't want to say stuck, but kind of stuck in the mindset of your own culture, you're also not open to exploring different perspectives.
Exactly.
Would you say, I don't expect you to have this number by head or anything, but like, would you say that the amount of Dutch companies accepting international students into their work environment is growing?
Yeah, of course,
Yeah?
100%. I don't know have the exact numbers out of my head. Indeed.
It would be very impressive.
No, but then you see already that especially in the Randstad, so Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Utrecht, The Hague, in hospitality sector, so bars, restaurants, like speaking English is almost the norm nowadays, while I think 10 years ago that was kind of an exception. So you see that the shorter the labor, the bigger the labor market shortage in the Netherlands becomes, the more I think accepting people are in having non-Dutch people helping them in hospitality sector, for example. But so I think I cannot imagine it's becoming less international
that's true.
for the companies, because in the end also companies are like, if you cannot find good Dutchies, the business needs to run, right? So then you should think in other options. And one of those options can be a migrant worker or an international student or someone, an asylum seeker, for example, or I don't know. Or not, it doesn't have to be international. It can also be someone who's with pension and want to still work 1 or 2 days a week. But you need to, I guess, in order to survive, you need to sometimes think out of the box. Or accept that you're probably not growing because you don't get new people in.
And would you say that once a company overcomes the struggle of hiring an international for the first time, are they more willing to hire internationals in the future, or is it a one and done thing most of the time?
No, like we as ISW/international students work, we're often working, the companies we work with often did not work with international people before, or international students in general. So we're basically bringing in that first international among all those Dutchies that are working there. And then afterwards we say, oh yeah, we thought it was quite tricky with not speaking Dutch, but yeah, now we see that this international student want to learn about the Vrijmibo, want to learn about Dutch working culture, about that he or she is staying for 2 or 3 years here. So we're also willing to invest in learning him or her extra things because we know that he or she stays for a long time. Now, once they see that, they think, okay, if this works, we can also take 1 or 2 extra, for example. So yeah, it usually, once the first is in, then usually we are able to help more students with a place. It depends on the company. It depends on, of course, also how that student is performing, because it doesn't help if you have you set up a partnership and the international student that you recruited is a half an hour late for the first day. Yeah, then
that doesn't help.
That doesn't help. Yeah.
Then the problem is not that you're international. The problem is that you're not a good employee.
I mean, I think even as an international student, if you recognize that there's not necessarily a bias against you, but you do have added pressure, especially if you know that this company hasn't worked with international students before, or there aren't many international students. It's sort of it falls onto you to sort of work. I mean, you should always be a good employee, but I feel like if you have this added pressure that you're one of the few internationals working there, and it's easy for the company to just say, never mind.
Yeah, you have this focus on you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's a good mindset for students to have. That listen, if I'm going to take this brave step of looking for a job in another country, then I should make sure to put my best foot forward instead of.
Yeah, that's true.
It depends on the company. If you're the first student and it's kind of a pilot from the company to try to work with international students, then it's, or an international staff, then it's like that. But I can imagine, just like that's how I think it's in the Netherlands a bit, not with every company, but it's something new. That's with everything new. You need to. If you're a new Dutch employee, you also need to have a bit of focus on, hey, how is she doing? People talking at the coffee corner about you, like, hey, what do you think about it? But how is that in your countries then? I mean, if you would work there as an international student, how would the people from Malta, Maltese, how would they, for example, would they not have a focus on you, or
in Malta, it's become very common to have internationals working. We don't have a lot of international students, but internationals we have in general, and it's very common to find them working everywhere. I think Malta, like a lot of people, like for me, it's weird when people say, "Oh, the Dutchies are great at English," because back home we speak mainly English. Like English is still an official language, so when it comes to that, there isn't really any barrier, like apart from non-EU people having to sort through all those visas, which I don't know how the bureaucracy works, but I definitely know it's more complicated than it is here. But other than that, there isn't that much of a barrier, and I think there's a big culture difference. When it comes to Maltese work, it's not as diligent as it is in the Netherlands. So it's very...
I love the Dutch working culture.
Yeah, so...
I don't have a lot of experience.
It's not as informal as it is in the Netherlands, so it's still a bit hierarchical, but not too hierarchical. And there isn't that much pressure on working as much as we do. Like here, I've noticed that there's sort of not a pressure on, but the people working are just more productive than they are back home.
But I think it's also because like they work less.
Yeah.
Do you like this data? I don't know if it's real. I was told this, but that the Netherlands, the country that less works in terms of hours in the world. I don't know if that's real, but it's probably one of the one that least works. But when they work, and I see this in the workplace, I see this here. They work very productively.
Yeah, that's true.
So they work a lot and very well, and then they leave at like 4, 5. Gone.
The hours here are something I noticed. Like the standard 9 to 5 hours, they're very convenient. Like everything start like most. I won't say everything, but a lot of things start at 9 and end at 5, 6. Like even the shops themselves. If you're going to work in a store,
insane.
You're going to be done by 8 maximum. You're not going to be working there for ages. Back home, for example, the workday starts latest at 8. You don't start later than 8. Most of the time, you could even start your shift at 7.
7:30. Yes.
But in it, like a grocery store, or what are we talking about? What type
in
of
a
store?
grocery store, in a
corporate job as well.
even a corporate job.
Okay.
Like you have to be lucky to find a corporate job that starts later than 8. It has to be like a super internationally minded company, the types with slides, like those type of companies will allow you to work
salad
at 9.
bar, slide.
But most
Nintendo
corporate
Switch.
jobs and most hospitality jobs, you will start, unless it's a restaurant, of course, because usually those don't open at 7 in the morning. And then they stay open until, like a store will stay open until 10. 11. A grocery store will stay open until 12.
But I agree with that. But also, I come from a big city, so that's also different. I imagine that in Amsterdam, the closing and opening times are different than here.
Yeah.
Because we are in Nijmegen, so it's like a little bit like at least around 6, everything is closed.
Although the shops still do end earlier than they do in a lot of other European countries, at least.
Yeah, that's true.
Sort of.
Yeah.
In Amsterdam, they might stay open a bit longer, but it's still not excessively long. So it's a nice benefit. I feel like there's a healthy work-life balance.
But is in Malta, for example, they start then at 7 or 8 and they work until 10?
No, of course not.
Oh, I mean, because we're talking not about the opening hours, we're talking about the shifts, right? Or
a shift is always 8, 9 hours, but usually you only get your 30-minute break, for example. Even though it's legally required to have like a 15-minute break here and there, it's not always enforced. Like also because you will see it on people's faces when you go there. They're not working hard. They're hardly working. So your shift still doesn't exhaust you as much as it was here, for example. Like you can see a very stark difference in the work culture. Like if you go to a store here, you'd immediately be asked, "Can I help you? Like, do you need anything?" You go back home, but in Malta you're ignored completely until you go to pay.
Yeah, but when I listened to this, like about Malta being an international country, and as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, Brazil, I don't see people hiring internationals that easily unless they speak fluent Portuguese.
Okay.
And that's also because no one speaks, well, I can't say no one, but not a lot of people speak English, especially not at the same level that the Dutchies do.
Yeah.
So that's something. And it also depends on which city you're from. If you're from the main cities, probably you have a higher chance of finding a job like that. And if you do find a job as an international, it's probably in a corporate job and in an international or multinational company.
Where the language is most probably also English. Then.
Exactly. So that's very, very different. And I'm not super familiar with the Brazilian working culture, but I would say that it's very also relaxed, like the Maltese one, but it's also very long, not very effective, I would say as well. What I like about here is that the hierarchies are a lot more flat. Of course, it depends on the job. You can say that for every job. But I would say that here is more flat. But if you compare with the Japanese culture, it's oh my god, it's like a straight lineup. That's how it works. And then also working hours are absurd. People are overworking. So it's very, very different. I really appreciate that there's working culture. And I honestly think it's more productive to have shorter days.
Yeah.
Like, and more productive days and longer days when you're doing like half the job.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have a weird question. So we might need to cut this out. But, so back home, there are biases against certain nationalities. So
Oh.
You might not want to hire people who come from Asia or people who come from the Balkans for one reason or another. For example, in Malta, it's because there's a large influx because of the wage gap and the currency difference, and people tend to be people who hire tend to judge them harsher. Not necessarily because of any preconceived bias against them, but just the sheer number of them that emigrate to Malta. When comparing that to the Netherlands, do you think that there's anything similar? Do you think that some nationalities might have a harder time finding a job?
Yeah, I think for paperwork reasons, for sure non-EU, because that's the work that's
No, I'm not looking at it because I'm not EU.
that's the work permit that's tricky there. That are tricky. It's not tricky, but it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
That's a thing. No, yeah. If I look from our experience, yeah, not really. Sometimes you have a company, for example, we're now working for a company or an organization, and they need specifically marketeers speaking French or speaking a certain language. Yeah, of course they're looking then for people that speak that language, because that's kind of that comes natural, I think. But if I look, like, I think, yeah, we have really, I'd say, quite some students working. I think above more than 50 nationalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in general, a lot of those companies don't really care where someone comes from. Honestly, I think they look at how the interview went, the feeling they got from a person, how enthusiastic someone is. Sometimes they ask, "Hey, what do you study?" and like, where are your interests and what brought you to the Netherlands? Those kind of things. And yeah, and if that's from Kenya or Brazil or Malta or China, whatever, is not really a thing. For sure, in our company, it's not. For sure, we also don't consider that in the recruitment for the clients that we work for. And I also don't think that happens at our clients with the interviews there. But yeah, you never, of course, know what the decision making is of a person. Of course, you call with a client, say, "Hey, you made this. Will you choosing selecting as a candidate to hire?"
Yeah.
And then they say, "I have a better feeling about this or this," and then if that's based on
you
never,
Yeah.
So I don't.
I mean, if you have,
but sometimes some people are just inclining to hire someone that looks like them or that's the same like them, and you just have, like, for example, a German person looks more Dutchy than someone from Malta. Like, to be direct, like, to be blunt, or someone from Brazil or Japan or somewhere else. So I think that's like a bias that some people just have, like, hey, I just want someone that is a bit the same like us, but he was born in Germany, 10, 20 kilometers above the border, on the other side of the border, and then it feels less international for more what they're used to, and then they go for that one, less risk.
Yeah, that's
true. But I'm not necessarily agree with that, but that's something, if you
sense.
really, because it's already sometimes a step for them to go working with non-Dutch speaking people, and of course we help them with the transition and everything as a partner, but then they might prefer having a smaller step than a bigger one. Don't know.
And it makes sense.
That does not happen. They not share it, and it doesn't happen often, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. I mean, if you work with over 50 nationalities, then if you have to extrapolate that, then most people are fine when it comes to looking.
I think does international students work have a lot of non-EU students?
I think I don't know out of my head how many non-EU students, but for us it's not a bottleneck. You just need to make sure that with all the paperwork that comes, like an EU person can start tomorrow technically, if you fix a contract today and all those kind of things. With a non-EU student, you need to wait for the work permit and everything. So it's a different process. So you need to communicate that to a client and manage that, of course. And also the how do you say that? Like you need to manage also the manage the expectations of the students. Okay, you're basically hired, but now we need to get that work permit going and hold your horses for 8 weeks once it has arrived. So Yeah, but for us, no, definitely not a barrier. And I honestly like to help EU students, but I also like non-EU students because they have more barriers. So if you can help them, then it even is more kind of satisfying to, yeah.
You see, guys, you have a chance. The non-EU people. It's so nice.
Being fair.
Yeah, I think that's the mindset that I think it's the ideal mindset for like for international students. Like listening to this as for an international a Dutch company, because inclusivity is something that like companies are not necessarily striving for.
Yeah,
and it's good to see that this multitude of nationalities is something that can be added to the company and something that companies want to do. I'd also like to help with the integration process, right?
Definitely.
To promote the integration process. And it's good to hear that.
Yeah, but I think like one of our the business coaches that we had before of international students work was Dick Bos, and his name is Dick. He always said like, I think you get more or better perspectives if you put someone from New Zealand, South Africa, and the Netherlands in a team than if you get 3 people from Nijmegen, Kuik, and Wiegen. Like those are villages around Nijmegen.
Yeah.
So you get more insights, you get more perspectives, and that brings in the end probably a better solution to a problem that you have. So, and that was kind of for me an eye opener. Like, obviously I agree with him as from an international students work perspective, but I do really think that internationals bring different perspectives to the table and try to not all of them, but like in general, I think they do.
I mean, even being exposed to different work cultures, being exposed to different cultural practices I can only see it benefiting. I mean, at the beginning, it might be slow to start and lead to more clashes than you would have with people who think the same way you do. That's always the case.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think in the long run, it might help when you come to approaching problems you might have or increasing productivity in certain cases because, this is how we do it back home. So this might help you, or even just a discussion leading to new ideas. It's always
but I think and that kind of triggers me, like next to like being also in the Dutch working culture, like as an international, once you have scored that job, you got it, and you have your first working week or working day, I think it's good that your manager, but he might not always think that way, but like you and your manager know, hey, there are some cultural differences here. You can say, hey, they're not there, and then you for sure will feel them in the workplace. So you can better, I think, when you start working, you have your first job, know, okay, things are done differently here than in Greece or wherever you come from. And then you can either think, oh, this is strange, or go to your Dutch manager and say, hey, I saw this. In my country, we would do it in this way. I don't want to, how do you say it? Like, say that it's a better way, but I just want to understand how it works here. Because perhaps you do a bad job in his eyes because you don't understand it or whatever. And then he's like, he's like taking very long breaks, while that in another country is very normal, but in the Netherlands it's not. And then you had a job, but then you don't have it anymore. Like, just be open and direct, and that is also a Dutch thing. That like if you then show that you're willing to improve or then you kind of it's better to overdo it, I would say, than to underdo it, because then
I mean, I
they
experienced.
don't know that you don't do your that you do your best, you know, like.
I mean, I experienced this when I was working with a Dutch company in a warehouse, and the difference is come up in ways you don't even expect. For example, I had periods of times where I didn't have things to do, like not because I didn't want to work, but because there was no work. Back home, the cultural thing is you pretend you're busy until something comes up. And that's what I started doing, because in my head I didn't assume that this might be an issue.
That's normal.
To me this was normal.
You're programmed in
exactly.
a way.
So that's what I started doing, and my boss was like, came up behind me, so I didn't see him coming. I was like, what are you doing? There's 0 orders. why are you waving your scanner around?
Were you pretending to scan things? Oh my god!
And
Were you scanning people instead of products? Or what were you
like your
doing?
contact.
and he was like, yeah, what are you doing? At first I was like, oh no, you know.
Bad.
I got caught.
And then we had the conversation, and he was like, listen, if you don't have anything to do, just come up and tell me, and I'll send you on a 15-minute break. You don't have to spend 15 minutes waving your scanner around. And I was like, oh, that's much better than I was doing. You know, I spent 15 minutes sitting down having a coffee instead of, and you know, it in the end of the day, it really helped. I mean, I was glad he caught me, because then, you know, sometimes there were 30 minutes where I had nothing to do and he didn't have things to give me. So he'd just be like, yeah, just go on break. Don't waste your time down here. And then once you have something to work, you'll get a notification or someone will come and call you. And I think it is very good advice to just immediately try and tackle these differences, and they really come up in ways that you don't usually expect.
And of course, scan the situation. If your manager's busy, then don't. Exactly. You know, like,
exactly.
But I think it's better to overdo it indeed than
That's true. And from an international student's point of view, like being open to those things, I think it's also part of integrating, because it's not only part of the job of the company to integrate you, you also have to have an open mindset and to communicate those things. Like you said, like you can't just expect people to just come Of course, if you're doing something wrong, it could be just wrong on their point of view, but then if you communicate that clearly instead of just keeping it for yourself and saying, oh, I hate this company or something like that. I think that's way more like that's the correct way of doing that. And you have to understand that these situations will occur. It's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
That these situations
Yeah. And ask for feedback indeed.
Like,
like if you do that yourself.
Also very Dutch.
Like, hey, I've been working here now for 2 weeks. I like it here, so I want to definitely stay here. Love the job so far. I think I can improve a lot. But if you have any feedback, let me know. So then this manager knows, okay, this person and he or she want to stay, so that's nice. So we can invest in this person, and I'm also willing to invest my time in you because you want to learn. You know, like, so then you both, the company performs better because you're performing better. So for him, it's also interesting. Next to that, I think most of the managers like to see people thrive, you know, and do a better job. And but if you don't share, they don't know.
It also helps with of anxiety. That's from personal experience.
Yeah, because I think with these things, like I think Dana has this quote, our colleague. Yeah, they never told me. Yeah, okay, they never told you, but in the workplace, you also need to like ask. I think that's not really applicable. That quote to you're the newbie. You need to figure it out. You know,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but for international students' work, like the recruitment. How does that work for the companies? Like how do you help companies overcome those barriers?
Yeah, so we actively, of course, reach out to companies to work with them, so we can create those jobs that were before only in Dutch and now are also open to international students. So we really try to create those English-speaking jobs. And then we start looking, hey, what are your needs? Like, when are the peaks in your production or in your logistical operation? When do you need extra people? Is it for a specific time or the whole year? Or and then see also like, okay, these people don't speak Dutch. Can we help you with certain steps that you need to undertake in your own organization? We help with the paperwork to make it as... We try to really get rid of all the barriers that are possible from their end. To pave the way for the internationals, and on the other hand, we try to inform the internationals, like about all the with questions about the pay slips or about the work permit, guide them in the right way for insurances that it might be applicable, so they don't go to the companies with that, because the companies want to have less barriers, so it's better if they come to us for that. For
they also
example,
might not have the resources to be able to help.
Yeah, because also not all companies have a big HR department that has figured all this out, and they might have other things on their head. So that's what we try to do, and therefore make it more normal, or like more those international students more accessible for them in that way.
Basically a shortcut for internationals to work in a Dutch company and the other way around as well.
Yeah, indeed. And that yeah, so that's but for the recruitment side, and then we have, for example, we have on our website, if you sign up, a join us link, so you can meet them with one of our co-workers to ask all questions about working in the Netherlands. And then when we have a vacancy, we'll send you a WhatsApp, or you can apply directly on the website, and then you have an English speaking recruiter that helps you with the recruitment and see if you're a good fit or one of the other roles that we have open.
Amazing. Well, see, guys, not all is hopeless.
Have hope. Okay, so I mean, today we talked about just that it's not that hard to find a job as an international student. So if you're an international student, don't give up. We also discussed the barriers that companies might face when it comes to hiring international students. We also discussed how international students work really decimates those boundaries, just gets rid of those boundaries and helps companies hire, their first international students and then international students after that. And we discussed the benefits that not just companies gain from international students, but international students would gain from working with these Dutch companies.
Absolutely.
But a tip from me, I think you should still try and learn Dutch. So
good one.
We have a podcast about that, so make sure to check it out. And I think, that's all. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
No, I think you covered pretty much it. I think I learned a lot in terms of why is there such a barrier, and what is our role as internationals to integrate and to be part of this a company and this culture. I think it's
it was definitely an interesting chat. And I think for me it's like finding a job is also, I guess, an international, like you got certain commitment, and by also investing in it multiple times a week, or like putting those CVs out
Exactly.
on different platforms. Like, don't expect to have it in one shot.
Definitely.
Like, keep doing it. Do it for 3 months, and then luck will turns out.
That's true.
Also,
resilience,
effort in, right?
perseverance at the end of the day.
Perseverance. That's, I guess, the word.
No.
But I also underline and understand that is tough if you are new with a country.
Definitely.
It's a culture shock you might experience. You need to nearly your study as well. So all combination makes it tough. Yeah. But I think it's once if you have the perseverance, if you can fix this, I'm willing to go to the city center, drop those CVs, go send me text online, like
eventually
that you're a great employee. 100% that you will find something.
Yeah. Okay, so guys, make sure to like,
follow,
and to subscribe.
And
make sure to leave some comments. So if you have questions, if you have suggestions for new podcast ideas, just let us know in the comments, and we will look through them and decide. I think that's it. Thank you for watching Brewing Student Culture podcast. Doi doi.
See you in the next episode.